What happens when royal privilege meets late-night television reality? In just 31 seconds, a single comment about American comedy would trigger the most explosive meltdown ever caught on live TV, turning a routine celebrity interview into a career-ending disaster that left millions of viewers absolutely speechless. The Late Night with Seth Meyers studio buzzed with its usual energy. The audience settled into their seats, completely unaware they were about to witness television history in the making. Seth Meyers, known for his quick wit and professional demeanor, sat behind his desk reviewing his notes one final time. Tonight's guest was supposed to be a straightforward interview, maybe some light jokes about royal life, perhaps a few laughs about adjusting to American culture. But from the moment Prince Harry walked onto that stage, something felt different. His posture was stiff, his smile forced, and there was an edge in his voice that seasoned viewers might have recognized as trouble brewing. Seth stood up with his trademark welcoming smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry." The audience erupted in applause as Harry made his entrance, waving briefly before taking his seat across from Seth. The applause died down, and Seth leaned forward with genuine enthusiasm. "Welcome to the show, Harry. Great to have you here." Harry nodded curtly. "Thanks for having me, I suppose." That phrase, "I suppose," should have been Seth's first warning sign, but being the professional he was, Seth pushed forward, determined to give the audience the entertaining interview they came to see. "So, you've been living in California for a while now. How are you adjusting to American life?" Harry shifted in his chair, already showing signs of irritation. "Well, Seth, that's quite a loaded question, isn't it? Adjusting implies I needed to change, when perhaps it's America that needs to understand what real culture looks like." The audience laughed nervously, unsure if this was meant to be a joke. Seth, ever the professional, chuckled and tried to steer things back on track. "Right, well, I'm sure there are differences. What's been the biggest surprise for you?" "The biggest surprise?" Harry's voice took on a sharper edge. "Honestly, it's how Americans think they invented entertainment. Your comedy shows here, they're so basic compared to what we have back home. British humor has sophistication, wit, intelligence. American comedy is just people making faces and yelling." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Seth's smile wavered for just a moment before he recovered, trying to keep things light. "Well, that's certainly one perspective, though I have to say, we Americans do love our face-making and yelling." But Harry wasn't laughing. Instead, he leaned forward with a look that could freeze water. "You see, that's exactly what I mean. You just proved my point. Instead of engaging with actual criticism, you deflect with self-deprecating humor. It's intellectual cowardice." The audience was now completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to sense the tension, zooming in slightly on both men's faces. Seth, still maintaining his composure, tried once more to salvage the interview. "Okay, let's talk about something else. Your charity work has been really impressive. Can you tell us about your latest project?" Harry scoffed audibly. "Oh, now we're changing subjects because the host can't handle a real conversation? This is exactly what I expected from American television. No depth, no substance, just surface-level pleasantries." Seth's professional mask finally began to crack. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But years of live television experience kept his voice steady. "Harry, I'm trying to have a conversation here. If you'd rather discuss comedy, we can do that. But maybe we could approach it with a little more respect for everyone involved." "Respect?" Harry's voice rose noticeably. "You want to talk about respect? How about the respect of not wasting my time with these vapid questions? How about the respect of acknowledging that some people bring actual substance to your little show here?" The camera caught several audience members exchanging shocked glances. This was clearly not going according to anyone's script. Seth, still trying to maintain control, leaned back in his chair. "Look, I understand you might have strong opinions about comedy, and that's fine. Different cultures have different styles of humor. But we're all just trying to entertain people here." Harry's eyes flashed with something that looked dangerously close to contempt. "Entertain people? Seth, what you do here isn't entertainment. It's intellectual fast food. It's empty calories for empty minds. And the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why American television is in the state it's in." The studio audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Some people were looking around nervously. Others were staring at their phones, and a few were actually whispering to each other. This was rapidly becoming less of an interview and more of a public humiliation. Seth took a deep breath, and for the first time since the interview started, his voice carried a slight edge. "Harry, I think we need to take a step back here. You're a guest on this show, and while I respect your right to have opinions, you're being pretty disrespectful to me, my staff, and frankly, to the audience who came here to have a good time." But Harry was just getting started. He leaned forward even further, pointing directly at Seth. "Disrespectful? I'm being honest. Maybe that's something Americans aren't used to hearing. Maybe you're all so wrapped up in your fake politeness that you can't handle someone telling you the truth about your mediocre entertainment industry." The tension in the studio was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Camera operators were getting different shots, sensing that something big was about to happen. The audience had gone from uncomfortable to genuinely concerned about where this was heading. Seth Meyers had hosted hundreds of interviews, dealt with difficult guests, and navigated countless awkward moments on live television. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what came next. The professional host who had always prided himself on keeping things light and fun was about to face the most challenging 30 seconds of his entire career. "Harry," Seth said, his voice now carrying the weight of someone who had reached their limit, "I think we need to remember that this is supposed to be a fun conversation. People tune in to laugh, to escape their problems for a little while. That's not mediocre. That's actually pretty valuable." Harry's response was swift and cutting. "Fun? Escape? Seth, do you realize how privileged and shallow that sounds? While people are dealing with real problems in the world, you're here making jokes about celebrity gossip and internet memes. It's insulting to anyone with half a brain." The audience was now completely silent, hanging on every word. Several people in the front row were visibly cringing. Seth's hands, which had been resting casually on his desk, were now clenched into fists. "You know what, Harry? I think you're missing the point. Yes, we make jokes. Yes, we try to have fun. But we also talk about serious issues. We raise money for charities. We give people a platform to discuss important topics. And we do it all while treating our guests with respect. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do." Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was the kind of cold, dismissive laugh that could make a person's blood boil. "Respect? You want to lecture me about respect? Seth, I'm a member of the British royal family. I've met with world leaders, attended state dinners, and represented my country on the global stage. And you think you can sit there in your little television studio and tell me about respect?" That was the moment everything changed. Seth's face went from frustrated to genuinely angry. His voice dropped to a level that somehow seemed more dangerous than if he had been yelling. "Harry, I don't care if you're the King of England. In this studio, you're just another guest. And right now, you're being incredibly rude to everyone here. The fact that you think your title gives you the right to insult people shows exactly the kind of person you really are." Harry's eyes went wide with shock. For a split second, it looked like he might actually back down. But instead, he doubled down with a vengeance. "The kind of person I really am? I'll tell you what kind of person I am, Seth. I'm the kind of person who doesn't have to pretend that mindless entertainment is somehow noble. I'm the kind of person who can see through the pathetic facade of American celebrity culture. And I'm definitely the kind of person who doesn't need to kiss up to talk show hosts to feel important." The studio was so quiet, you could hear the air conditioning humming. Seth stared at Harry for what felt like an eternity. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady but filled with controlled fury. "You know what, Harry? You're absolutely right about one thing. You don't need to kiss up to anyone. In fact, you don't need to be here at all. This interview is over." Harry looked genuinely shocked for the first time since he'd sat down. "Excuse me? You heard me. We're done. I've tried to be professional. I've tried to give you the benefit of the doubt, but you've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me, my show, my country, and my audience. I'm not going to sit here and let you continue." But Harry wasn't finished. Instead of getting up or apologizing, he leaned back in his chair with a smirk that could have launched 1,000 angry tweets. "Oh, this is rich. The great Seth Meyers can't handle a little honest criticism, so he's going to throw a tantrum on his own show. How very American of you." Seth stood up from his desk, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually walk over to Harry. The audience gasped audibly. Camera operators scrambled to get the best angle of what was clearly about to be television gold. "Harry, I'm asking you nicely to leave. Don't make this any harder than it already is." Harry crossed his arms and settled deeper into his chair. "Make me." Those two words hung in the air like a challenge that couldn't be ignored. The audience was now completely captivated, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Some people had their phones out, recording what would surely become viral clips within hours. Seth looked at Harry, then at the audience, then back at Harry. When he spoke, his voice was calm but absolutely final. "Security." The word echoed through the studio like a gunshot. Harry's smug expression faltered for just a moment, but he quickly recovered, laughing as if this was all some big joke. Security? Really, Seth? You're gonna have me physically removed from your show because I hurt your feelings? This is gonna look great in the headlines tomorrow. Two security guards appeared at the edge of the stage, clearly unsure about the situation they were walking into. Seth looked at them and nodded. "Gentlemen, please escort our guest out of the building." Harry finally stood up, but instead of leaving quietly, he turned to address the audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you challenge American mediocrity. They can't handle the truth, so they silence you. Remember this moment, because this is your entertainment industry showing its true colors." The audience sat in stunned silence as the security guards approached Harry. One of them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, spoke quietly. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Harry held up his hands in mock surrender, still wearing that infuriating smirk. "Don't worry, I'm going." "But Seth, this conversation isn't over. The world is going to hear about how you couldn't handle one honest guest on your little comedy show." Seth, still standing behind his desk, watched as security began to escort Harry toward the exit. But just as they reached the edge of the stage, Harry broke free from their gentle guidance and turned back towards Seth one final time. What happened next would be replayed on social media millions of times, dissected by talk show experts, and remembered as the moment when royal entitlement met its match on live television. Harry's final 31 seconds on that stage would destroy any remaining sympathy the public might have had for him. Harry spun around with the kind of dramatic flair that belonged in a soap opera, not a late-night talk show. His face was flushed red with anger, and his voice carried across the silent studio like a battle cry. "You know what, Seth? You want to know what your real problem is? It's not that I'm being rude. It's that I'm everything you'll never be. I'm relevant without trying. I'm important without begging for attention. And that terrifies you." The security guard stopped, unsure whether to continue or wait for this final outburst to end. Seth, still standing behind his desk, looked at Harry with something between pity and disgust. "Harry, you're embarrassing yourself. Just leave." But Harry was beyond reason now. He pointed an accusatory finger directly at Seth, his voice rising to a level that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "Embarrassing myself? I'm a prince, Seth. A prince. Do you understand what that means? It means I was born to be better than you. It means I don't have to sit here and pretend that your little jokes are funny or that your questions are clever. It means I'm royalty, and you're just some guy with a microphone." The audience collectively gasped. Several people in the front row actually covered their mouths in shock. This wasn't just rude anymore. This was a complete meltdown happening in front of millions of viewers. Seth's response was quiet, measured, and absolutely devastating. "Harry, being born into a title doesn't make you better than anyone. It just makes you luckier. And right now, you're showing everyone exactly how little you deserve that luck." Harry's face went from red to purple. He took a step towards Seth's desk, causing the security guards to move closer. "How dare you? You have no idea what I've sacrificed, what I've given up, what I've been through. You sit here in your comfortable little world making jokes about things you don't understand, and you think that gives you the right to judge me?" Seth didn't move from behind his desk, but his voice carried the authority of someone who had finally had enough. "I'm not judging you because of your title, Harry. I'm judging you because of how you're acting right now. And right now, you're acting like a spoiled child who's never been told no in his entire life." That comment hit Harry like a physical blow. He stood there for a moment, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, before he found his voice again. "A spoiled child? A spoiled child? Seth, I served my country in the military while you were making jokes about politicians. I've worked with charities around the world while you've been stuck in this studio talking to celebrities about their latest movies. Don't you dare call me a spoiled child." The audience was now completely riveted. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable and into the realm of completely fascinating. Seth looked at Harry with genuine sadness in his eyes. "Harry, if you have to keep telling people how important you are, then maybe you're not as important as you think." That was the final straw. Harry's composure completely shattered. He started walking towards Seth's desk, forcing the security guards to quickly step in and physically restrain him. "Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? I could have you fired. I could have this entire network shut down. You have no idea who you're dealing with." The guards, professional but firm, began pulling Harry back toward the exit, but he kept shouting, his voice echoing through the studio as he was dragged away. "This isn't over, Seth. You think you can humiliate me on national television and just get away with it? I have connections you can't even imagine. I have power you'll never understand." Seth, still standing calmly behind his desk, waited until Harry was almost off the stage before delivering his final comment. Harry, if you really had that kind of power, you wouldn't need to tell everyone about it. Harry tried to break free from the security guards one last time, screaming back at Seth, "You'll regret this. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are. This is the biggest mistake you've ever made." The guards finally managed to get Harry to the exit, but his voice could still be heard echoing from backstage as he continued his tirade. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud, laugh, or just sit there in shock. Seth slowly sat back down at his desk, straightened his tie, and looked directly into the camera with the composure of a man who had just handled an impossible situation with grace. Well, folks, that was unexpected. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll try to get back to our regularly scheduled programming. As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, the audience erupted into a mixture of applause, nervous laughter, and excited chatter. They had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. Seth remained at his desk, taking a deep breath and shaking his head with a small, tired smile. He had handled one of the most difficult guests in television history with professionalism, dignity, and just the right amount of righteous anger. He had stood up for himself, his show, and his audience without ever losing his cool or stooping to Harry's level. Meanwhile, Harry's voice could still be heard faintly from somewhere backstage, presumably still arguing with security, still insisting that he was being treated unfairly, still convinced that he was the victim in this entire situation. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect. On one side, a professional broadcaster who had maintained his integrity under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. On the other side, a man whose sense of entitlement had just cost him whatever remained of his public dignity. In those final moments, as the commercial break continued and the studio began to return to normal, one thing was absolutely clear. Harry had walked onto that stage as a prince, but he was leaving as just another cautionary tale about what happens when privilege meets reality.